Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at your horoscopes for the month of February. In particular, we are going to take a look at some of the astrology happening in the middle of February. From about the 15th to the 20th, we are going to see a conjunction between Venus and Neptune in Pisces. Of course, Venus exalted in that sign. And then we are going to see a new moon in Pisces. And this is sort of paving the way for the major event, which is Saturn's entrance into Pisces in the early part of March. We will also in March be talking about Pluto's entrance into Aquarius, and we'll be looking at that as well. But today we're going to focus on this shift into the whole sign house of Pisces in your birth chart, where that lands based on your rising sign. Of course, you could listen to this today for your sun sign as well, if that's what you tend to listen to. But I do recommend your rising sign, as that will be the horoscope that actually aligns with the whole sign houses of your birth chart. So anyway, before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, share your comments. It really helps the channel to grow, helps the algorithm pick up on things. I also like reading what you guys have to say about the transits. As always, you can find transcripts of any of the daily talks on my website, which is nightlightastrology.com. When you're there, be sure to check out the masterclass series, which starts in February. We're doing a deep dive into the moon cycle and the relationship between the sun and the moon in Hellenistic astrology. This is ideal for people who already have a little bit of a background in Hellenistic astrology, but want to go deeper. So check out the list of topics in the masterclass series on the website. Any questions you have about it, feel free to email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. There's also a need-based tuition option if that is useful for you. Okay, well, let's go ahead and put up the real-time clock and get into our horoscopes. So I have the new moon on the screen right now, and I'm actually going to use that date for all of us here. And let's go back just one day. All right, here we go. So again, the transit that we are talking about is on the 15th of February. We are going to see Venus and Pisces conjoining Neptune. Venus, of course, is exalted in the sign of Pisces. This is a very romantic and dreamy kind of transit to have coming through, especially around Valentine's Day. For those people who are celebrating, it's kind of a quintessential Valentine's Day type of transit. And then we have a new moon forming on the 20th also in Pisces. So that combination is really what we're going to be looking at today. I'm going to pull this back a little bit so that we have, actually, let's go to the day that we have the conjunction between Venus and Neptune. That'll look kind of nice. All right. So anyway, the reason that we are going to focus on the whole sign house of Pisces for your horoscope and just draw your attention to the topics of that house is that not only are two of the biggest transits of the month happening in that whole sign house of Pisces in your birth chart, but also Saturn in early March will enter the sign of Pisces, where it will then start doing its 2.5 years worth of work and bringing a real focus and a kind of gravitas to that area in your chart. So preparing ourselves for some of the major transits of March, especially Saturn's entrance into Pisces, is our focus for today. All right, well, we're just going to go through and talk about those house topics one at a time and give you a sense of where to focus your attention, or where you might notice the karmic/cosmic action developing in the next month. So if you are an Aries rising, you have Pisces occupying your 12th house. You're getting the conjunction in that house, followed by the new moon in that house, the Venus-Neptune conjunction. So what I would look to in the 12th house, you're often looking at shadows, secrets, unconscious material, the kinds of things that you are unaware of that undermine you, or the kinds of things that you don't pay attention to that are crying out for development, integration, and more conscious attention. You can think about it as your blind spot, and things that grow in our blind spot is the things that, that will undermine us, or the things in our blind spot are the things that we haven't taken the time to develop or pay attention to. And so if you're an Aries rising, I would be paying attention to the romantic, the sensitive, the sensual, the feminine, the imaginative, the otherworldly, the emotional, as well as the desire body and your relationship to things like physical, carnal, worldly pleasure, sexuality, desire, attraction, magnetism, What do you find yourself super attracted to? And do you give that the time of day or not? That would be a great question for the transits of the month, especially with Saturn going into that house. Saturn will, how can I put it? Saturn will bring a lot more serious focus to the things that are in that blind spot. And again, if you think about things in the blind spot as generally either the things that you're neglecting or the things that are going to consume you, and like your demons. Saturn's about to bring a lot of attention to that area. So you could think of this month as starting to draw your attention in that direction, especially from the 15th to the 20th. So that is for you, all of you Aries risings out there. Let's go to Taurus. So if you are a Taurus, the 11th house is in the spotlight. Now we're talking about friends. This house was called the house of the good spirit. And so we're talking about friends, we're talking about aspirations, we're talking about groups and communities, everything that involves the things that you wish or hope or aspire for in a really idealistic, dreamy, future-oriented way, but also more broadly speaking, your community, your social life, friendships, and so forth. So there is a real serious focus that's going to start coming in to that area of your life as Saturn enters that house. I looked back, I'm a Taurus rising. I looked back at the last time that Saturn was in Pisces. And what I noticed was that I was younger and still in school, hadn't graduated high school yet. And my social life changed dramatically as I started making more room for the arts, religion. So especially the arts and the religious side of my personality. I had lots of friends that were into sports. That was another big part of my personality. But I started making room for drama, theater, music, art, film, and religious experience. Even if I was raised a preacher's kid, but I started having my own religious life, you could say. So true to Piscean form, the things that we should be thinking about right now, if you're a Taurus rising, are probably the things that are more artistic, that are more spiritual, philosophical, emotional, or sensual also. And just like paying attention to what Venus desires and how Venus is seeking to express her desires in terms of your social life or the kinds of things that are shaping your interests and passions, and then who you connect with as a result of those interests and passions. Watch for this though, because as Saturn enters that house, it gets a lot more serious. And if you're not being true to yourself in terms of your aspirations and your social life, then you'll find that you are more at odds with, or that there's more dissonance with the people around you, or with the kinds of groups that you're a part of. All right, let's move on to Gemini. Now, this places the conjunction between Venus and Neptune and Pisces into your 10th house, and then that new moon that will come along around the 20th, also in the 10th house. Now, that, broadly speaking, means your career, but it can also mean your public reputation or just your actions in the world. The 10th house had such a broad meaning. What do you do when you leave your house, or when you engage with the larger world, society, and public or collective hemisphere of life? How do you show up? What are you interested in? What kind of authority do you have, or what kind of skills, or how are you recognized? What's your reputation like? As well as what do you actually do, or what is your profession? And so what I would think of with Saturn entering that house is, where are you reaching a limit? Saturn in the 10th, having just gone through this as Aquarius in my 10th house for several years, there's been a lot. I've just noticed over the past years that I've had to get really clear about what is life-giving and what sort of sucks or drains my energy with work. Also, I personally, as you guys know who watch my channel, went through a pretty lengthy process of choosing to disidentify with a religious community that I was a part of. But one of the major concerns that I had was just How is it going to look? I've taken up this identity publicly. I'll now be taking back my own name, and that'll be something that's done publicly. And what about my reputation? And so Saturn will bring a kind of seriousness around your sense of who you are publicly and how you're seen by the world, and either that or what you do for a living. And there's a real serious like focus that's coming in that direction. But it's also the way is being paved by the goddess, and she should be drawing our attention this month, if you're a Gemini, to what do you love, what do you like, what pleases you, what makes you happy, which can then inform what Saturn's about to do, which is help you get really serious about those things, or eliminate things, or come to the limits of things that don't work. So those are the kinds of things to watch for if you're a Gemini rising this month, especially 15th through the 20th of the month, starting to develop and prepare for Saturn's entrance. All right. Well, the same kinds of limits you're going to find that we're coming to in all different areas of life. So for Cancers, you're seeing the 15th to 20th of the month as the conjunction between Venus and Neptune, followed by the new moon in the 9th house, followed by Saturn's entrance into the 9th house in the month of March. So the 9th house being the house that pertains to our beliefs, whether that's religious, political, spiritual, ethical. This is the house that guides our life according to what we think about life and reality. Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? And even if you don't think you have a well-developed answer, we are all living. Most of us are going to live based on a philosophy. Even if my philosophy is, I don't know, I just go with the flow. That's still a philosophy that we're living by. So these 9th house transits, especially with Saturn coming into that house in the next month or so here, suggest that there needs to be a deeper and more serious look at what you believe, and how what you believe guides or shapes your life, or how it wants to guide or shape or even change your life in some ways in the next couple of years. This could mean getting really serious about something that you want to study or teach. It could be about traveling abroad. It could be about religious and spiritual experience, or religious conversion, or a crisis of faith. It could be about calling into question various teachings or ideas that you've held rather unconsciously. Venus being there makes me think, with the conjunction to Neptune, that the incorporation of the sexual, the sensual, the feminine, the artistic, the physical, and the desire body are going to be an important part of the conversation. Looking at those things, developing those things is part of what I would say Saturn is likely to be doing. Now, Saturn alone would seem like you could see Saturn entering the 9th and someone becoming really austere. But don't forget, this is Pisces, which is the exaltation of Venus. It's appropriate then that Venus would conjoin Neptune as a kind of, prelude to Saturn's entrance into that house. You're about to get serious, but serious about the imaginative, the romantic, the feminine, and the watery and oceanic qualities of the goddess. So think about those things if you're a Cancer, your intellectual, your spiritual life especially. All right, so Leo. Now, if you're a Leo, this conjunction between Venus and Saturn on the 15th, Venus and Neptune, on the 15th, is happening in your 8th house, followed by the new moon in Pisces around the 20th, also in the 8th house, followed in early March by Saturn's entrance into Pisces in the 8th house. Now, the 8th house is a house that is most of the time misunderstood. It's often associated with death, and it's often associated with, this kind of like, often like super Plutonian things because of the 8th house's modern association with Scorpio, and Scorpio with Pluto, and so on. Ancient astrologers did not associate the 8th house with Scorpio, nor did they associate it with Pluto. But rather, one of the ways that one of the phrases that you'll hear associated with the 8th house is the esteem of other people. The esteem of other people would mean their value, their worth, their wealth, their abilities, and any way in which those things that other people have bless or help you, or be of, or serve as some kind of benefit to your life, as in inheritance, for example. or marriage to a wealthy spouse, or a spouse who's very talented, or has uh, you know a good skill set that's marketable or something like that. On the other hand, the esteem of other people is also about seeking the validation and approval of other people. It can also be about other people's reliance upon you, debts and obligations to other people, or those that they have to you. So when you see Venus and Neptune conjoining in this house, followed by a new moon, followed by Saturn's entrance into this house, it's as though there's a very a seriousness approaching when it comes to what other people give you or what they withhold from you, what you can depend or rely upon from other people, and what you really shouldn't rely or depend upon from other people. Saturn in the eighth house can be a sign that the well has dried up in terms of someone else's availability to you emotionally. It can also be a sign that someone's, a spouse's financial life or professional life is about to get rough, or that someone's going to be in debt and require your help. On the other hand, it could be a way of saying that your options are going to be limited, or that you're entering into a period of time that is somewhat limited because of how dependent you will be upon someone else. For example, I can't tell you how many times I see, people come in for a reading. They've got Saturn transiting their eighth house. They're stuck doing full-time parenting while their spouse is earning all the money, and they feel somewhat controlled, or, even, like imprisoned by the dynamic, more or less severe things that I've heard, So Saturn's entrance into the eighth house is about who or what you are going to be bonded to, limited by, or the kind of cross that you bear when it comes to social, emotional, and financial contracts with other people, karmic contracts with other people. So Venus's connection with Neptune this month and the new moon there could be there could be a lot of attraction to what someone else has, or what they offer, or what they hold, or what they promise. But remember that things are going to get quite serious, and there's a little bit of a devil's bargain feeling with this one, where you could easily, you could end up, because of what you're attracted to, you could end up more obligated and bound than you're imagining you will. On the other hand, what we want requires sacrifice. And so thinking about appropriate sacrifices for things that you desire or love would also be an appropriate way of looking at this transit. Well, those are just a few things to consider for all of my Leos out there. I got to labor a little bit more with the eighth house. It's not an easy one to describe for this sequence of transits. All right. Now let's take a look at Virgo rising, which places all of this into the seventh house. So if you are a Virgo rising, between the 15th and the 20th, we are going to see Venus conjoin Neptune, and then followed by a new moon in Pisces, followed by, in early March, by the entrance of Saturn into Pisces. So that's another very powerful dynamic. Here's what you can expect from this one. First of all, the obvious is this is the house of marriage and relationships. And so when Saturn enters that house, things get serious around love and relationships. I have seen just as many divorces as I have seen marriages with Saturn to the seventh house transits. The reason for that is that Saturn doesn't bring good or bad things. It often just brings more serious things. So commitment, deepening commitment, vows, promises, and the consummation of marriage in ceremony that transitions you into a different and often more mature phase in life can be a Saturn-like transit. This could literally be a transit that's setting you up for a season of life in which your commitments are going to grow a lot more serious. But it's nice to have Venus and Neptune ushering it in. It feels like love, romance, and the deepening of bonds and commitments. On the other hand, if you're finding that what you are attracted to right now could be so clarifying, so healing, so heart opening, that it also makes you realize that you're not in the right situation, or that you don't have the right supportive kinds of relationships, in which case this sequence could be about kind of realizing what you need and what you want, but also that means that there's work ahead in terms of changing the kinds of relationships you are in. That may not be easy for some of us. So either way, the focus for Virgo risings is very straightforward compared to almost any other horoscope this month. There's a lot of emphasis coming through on the house of relationships, love, sensuality, sexuality. So watch for there to be quite a serious set of developments in the next month or so, especially all the way into about the middle of March. All right, let's go forward to Libra, and this places Saturn's upcoming entrance into the 6th house, with Venus and Neptune conjoining in Pisces in the 6th, and the new moon in the 6th house. So the 15th to 20th is like a little Piscean firework display, followed by Saturn's entrance into the 6th house in early March. Now, this is a house that is associated with labor, sickness, sacrifice, and service. Not an easy house. I love that Venus and Neptune come through, a new moon comes through, and then Saturn enters when it comes to, I love something so much that I am willing to work very hard for it. That could be a career, it could be something that you're studying, it could be a business that you're setting up, it could be a relationship that you're working on. Whatever the case might be, the willingness to hurt, the willingness to burn, the willingness to work for something that you love is paramount here. I think this transit has a lot to do with the ache of what we love, the work of what we love, healing and mending things that are broken or hurt or wounded, especially around love and relationships. That could be a theme that comes to mind this month. You could also see, again, the themes of service, compassion, sacrifice, healing, sexual, physical, relational, romantic, all as major themes. Any kind of service work that involves women or the goddess, or themes that are more feminine in nature, those kinds of themes alongside of the hardworking and sacrificial themes of the 6th house also come to mind. So that is my forecast for you Libras out there. Let's go forward now. And whoops, here we go. We've got Scorpio on the ascendant now, which brings the conjunction of Venus and Neptune around the 15th into your 5th house, followed by the new moon on the 20th into the 5th house, followed by Saturn's entrance into Pisces in early March, again into the 5th house. Now, this house was called the Joy of Venus and the House of Good Fortune. It is associated commonly with things like creativity and the arts and so forth, children and pregnancy. But also, I love to call on the way that Indian astrologers looked at the 5th house, which was also, because the 5th house is trine to the 1st, the 1st was called Dharma. With a trine from the house of Dharma to the 5th, you think of the joy or happiness derived from being yourself and doing what you're good at. So when you see a lot of planets coming through the 5th house, right, like we have from the 15th to the 20th, Venus-Neptune conjunction, a new moon, and then all of a sudden Saturn entering that house, I think that there are going to be some very clear contrasts for Scorpios between what gives you joy and what leads to a feeling of being satisfied and happy and fulfilled creatively and personally, both in your leisure and in your hobbies or your relationships, your professional life. Just what brings joy and happiness? What brings a sense of creative fulfillment? And then with Saturn entering, what's holding you back from doing more of that? Or how are you feeling limited or inhibited some way in terms of your ability to express or be in touch with those things? Or in what way do you need to get more serious or committed to those things? But there's a seriousness coming in around the topic of happiness and creative fulfillment. Now, these could be transits that also just put a great emphasis on things like pregnancy or your children, your relationship with your kids as well, since the 5th house tends to be associated with those topics. But I think of this as a time where I say to myself, my joy, my bliss needs to be taken more seriously. And Venus-Neptune should set you up by giving you some really clear images or desires that are clarifying. This is what will make me happy. This is what I'm attracted to. followed by Saturn into Pisces, which is a little heavier, saying, okay, well, why aren't we doing it? Or how can we do more of it? Or what's holding us back? Or how do we develop this or include more of this? And what kinds of sacrifices are going to be needed for the sake of that joy or that emotional satisfaction? All right, let's put Sagittarius on the ascendant. So with Sag on the ascendant, we have Neptune and Venus conjoining in the 4th house, followed by, that's the 15th, followed by the new moon on the 20th, followed by early March, Saturn's entrance into the 4th house. So that's the house of home, family. That is a house associated with fathers, but parents more generally, property and living environment. So when you see this sequence, you think especially about the potential of a kind of harvesting, a karmic, like the you think of Saturn, you think about the autumn equinox and the fall harvest. Saturn's exalted in the sign of Libra. And Saturn was also associated with the 4th house by astrologers like Manilius, because there's a kind of underworld connotation that Saturn has, a sense of Saturn as the cosmic judge that evaluates the soul and upon death guides its transition to the next life based on its heart and its deeds and stuff like that. So when Saturn enters the 4th house, there can be a pretty deep a feeling like you're getting down to the most fundamental ground level patterns in your life. They often come around home and family and ancestral karma, but you're getting down to like the foundation of, at worst, like the foundation of all of our bullshit, just getting right down to it. But also at best, it's about, look at the foundation that you've built. Look at the things that you can build upon because you've developed your character, you've developed your calling, you've developed your gifts. And so Saturn in the 4th can be like a transit that is reinforcing, here's the solid structure you've earned, you've worked hard for, that you can build on and develop. And there's a deeper sense of like a maturity and a stability that Saturn in the 4th will start to grant. And that can come in through things like, owning a home or starting a family or just feeling more emotionally secure or financially secure. But it can also be about the things that, okay, we're getting down to brass tacks, no messing around. This is core issues that are troubling us or, like I said, getting down to the bottom of the bullshit barrel. So in that sense, it's an interesting transit that Saturn is coming up into that 4th house, but that Saturn's entrance into the 4th house is happening right after Venus conjoins Neptune. One of the things that I would say is, what kind of ideal vision do we have for the life we'd like to be living around the topics of home and family? Like what do we want our home life to look like? Love, marriage, family, our home or living environment. What is the ideal picture there that would bring us happiness or joy? There's a strong sense of the ideal, the beautiful, that which is desirable coming in about the middle of February into that house. But then it's followed by this deep foundational work and gravitas that's coming in with Saturn in the 4th house. So very interesting contrast. This is the kind of thing where someone says, I really have this vision or this image. This is what I want. And then Saturn comes in and says, okay, well, that plan or that vision is going to require that, we tear some things down to the studs and rebuild. So those are some different ways of looking at it. But a strong emphasis on the karma around family, home, living environment, parents, ancestral karma, etc. All right, well, Capricorn. So with Capricorn, we're looking at the 15th to 20th of February as a series of events taking place in your 3rd house. So that starts with Venus's conjunction to Neptune, followed through to the 20th with the new moon in Pisces. After those series of events from the 15th to 20th, then again in early March, Saturn will enter the 3rd house. To me, this is all about change of mind. the, you know, as a creature or a child of born under the sign of Saturn, your mindset is about to change as your ruling planet has gone from your first house to your second house in its own signs. A lot of like very basic things over the past 5 years: identity, health, self-development, money, skill development, financial realities. Those are first and second house topics. When it comes into the third house, now it's saying we need to reframe your mind. We need to change your emotional and mental outlook. Mental health could be a topic of importance right now. Your daily habits and rhythms, the seriousness of what is on your mind. Do you need to be more lighthearted, or are there some new things that you're taking more seriously than you ever have before? Are you studying something or learning something? What's happening in the environment around you, and how is it shifting the way that you think? Maybe you're someone who, has not been as aware as you should be about what is going on around you in the lives of the other people around you. Saturn in the third house, as a house that was associated with the moon and the environment around us, especially the everyday environment, can simply draw your attention to things in the environment that now are needing more serious time and energy. And they're usually going to be things that are sort of outside of yourself. Saturn in the third house could also require of you that you change your way of thinking or communicating in some way. It can bring up the karma of siblings. And it can also be about, sometimes there's a way in which Saturn in the third house will make you feel alien or foreign, or like you don't fit in somehow within your everyday environment. So just feeling like there's a mismatch, or that, because you're changing, that you don't feel like you fully fit in your day-to-day life, and feeling like there's a little bit of dissociation between yourself and the environment. You could notice that. It doesn't have to be a 24/7 thing that you're dealing with, but just feeling a little bit like a fish out of water. I would not be surprised if that were the case. A little bit of angst is, not a bad thing here. I think something about this transit suggests to me that you are trying to figure out where you belong, and that's a mental and emotional journey over the next couple of years that you're going to be going on, and maybe some experimentation is needed along the way. All right, let's go forward to Aquarius rising, which places Venus and Neptune into Pisces in the second house. That's around the 15th of February, followed by the new moon in Pisces on the 20th, followed by Saturn entering the second house in the early part of March. So if you're an Aquarius rising, there's quite a strong emphasis that's developing this month into next on the topic of your resources. Now, that could be money and finances, but the second house is also frequently associated with the skills that we have. In other words, any type of resource that we have that can be used or employed to sustain and support our lives, to help us be independent, self-sufficient, strong, and so forth. So I like this as a time where what you desire, what you want, what you're falling in love with, what is appealing to you, what pulls you in the direction of your dreams, that there's the need to invest more seriously in the things that you love or are attracted to, the things that you dream about and long for. Now, this could also be a feeling of, in some ways, having to deal with almost like an unrequited love. Like Saturn entering the second house can be like, as much as you love these things, it's going to be hard to make a living doing them. Or as much as you love these things, it's going to require a lot of hard work and sacrifice to develop them. So the theme of what we're attracted to and what we want to have, or what we want to develop, and then the kind of sacrifice, hard work that it will require, or the kind of hard reality that Saturn will bring into the picture. I'm sorry, you're just not going to be able to have that as much as you want it. Or I'm sorry, you may want that, but it's going to cost a lot, mentally, emotionally, energetically, in terms of your time or money. Or it could also be that it's time to relinquish things. Well, I've loved this, but now I'm no longer attracted to it. So the sequence of Venus and Neptune can be about new things that we're attracted to, followed by the need to relinquish old things that we're no longer attracted to. But either way, watch for a more serious period of time coming through around money, finances, resources, what you want and what you have, and the development of those things. If you have a business for yourself, for example, you may find that this upcoming transition of Saturn into Pisces will be about, a period where if you work really hard, some really great things can come from it, but don't expect things to happen without a kind of probably a lot of hard work and sacrifice. That's one of the big themes of Saturn in Pisces, is sacrifice. Okay, well, let's go along finally to our last sign, Pisces, and we have the Venus-Neptune conjunction around the 15th, followed by the new moon in your first house on the 20th, followed in early March by Saturn's entrance into the first house. Now, that house is associated with identity, psychology, character, body, health. It's the only house that is referred to as the house of the spirit, soul, body, character, psychology, the whole thing. Every other house has something to do with some other dimension of your life. The first house is really the only house that is about you, thoroughly about you. So with a Venus-Neptune conjunction there, oftentimes you'll feel very attractive and beautiful. There'll be a way in which your very body and presence or personality are just infused with Venus-Neptune, which can be really nice. People are often quite attracted to that. But also with Saturn entering this house, there's questions about responsibility. It can be very existential when Saturn enters the first house. What do I want to be? Do I fit in or not? Am I acting out the role that I want? If my life is like a movie, am I happy with the character I'm playing, the role I'm playing? It's interesting that Venus-Saturn, which can be so glamorous and romantic, is conjoining, but then closely followed by Saturn entering the first house. It's as though there's a sharp contrast. Well, this is how I see myself versus this is how I actually am. Or this is what I want to be, but this is where I'm actually at. A very deep and serious period of self-reflection and self-refinement are coming for Pisceans. A period where you have to look at where you want to go compared to where you are, and again, what sacrifices are required. You have to look at your emotional health, your physical health. You have to look at what responsibilities you have, what things you need to say no to. And you have to look at what kind of cross is worth carrying to get to where I want to be in any area of my life. And what are the sacrifices that, I really shouldn't be making because they're exhausting me or they're draining me on some level. So those are some insights that I have for all of you who are Pisces rising out there. Well, those are my horoscopes for the month. I hope that this was useful. Some are more concise and focused than others. I don't ever mean to, shortchange anybody, but some houses are easier and more concise and focused. Others require more working out because the topics of the house are not, like the 7th house is always easy to talk about. The 10th house is always easy to talk about. The 8th house is a lot harder to talk about with certain planetary pairings. So anyway, I hope that you got some value out of this. We'll be taking a look at all of the major astrology of February tomorrow. I hope you guys are having a great week and that you'll also enjoy the rest of this week's content. We have a lot of cool things coming, so stay tuned and we will see you again soon. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.